Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another conversation with another CMU alumnus. And I'm just 5 minutes advance for our meeting time, which is at 3 p.m. So we're going to meet him and learn more about him later. So stay tuned. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another conversation with me. And especially today, I'm honored to have another friend who will be, we'll be talking about a few things, but this is kind of special today because originally we wanted to meet for coffee or tea because, I have my tea.
Unfortunately, ma'am, right now I don't feel like drinking coffee, so I have water with me instead.
Okay, that's fine. That's the best beverage. Sige, let's backtrack a little bit. So, my guest, who is actually a vet, and aside from that, he has a lot of other information on his CV. But suffice to say, his name is Doc Ariel, and he can tell you more about himself later on. We had this chat on FB that he wished he could ask me questions in genetics, and I said maybe we could meet up for coffee, and then we can do that. But it seems that it's not possible to really have a physical meetup. So I suggested that maybe we can talk online and he could ask me questions. I hope I can answer his questions. I'm a little bit nervous because what about if I cannot answer his questions? But I also have a few questions for him. And because his life, just like my previous guests in the conversation, really is very interesting. And I'll tell you more. One thing about him before he would introduce himself to you. Doc Ariel used to be the former student regent of CMU, of Central Mindanao University. So none of my previous guests were student regents. You can only be a student regent if you served Central Mindanao University as chair of the Supreme Student Council.
Yeah.
So yan ang isang major yan ang kanyang major accomplishment in his CV. So that's why I'm sure that we could learn a lot from him. And it would be really interesting to talk about this young person who has the whole of Mindanao as his coverage for his work. So, hi Ariel. Thank you for saying yes to this crazy endeavors of mine. And you are friends with most of my guests. Previous guests, and kaya meron how do I say it? I have the guts to sort of ask you to have a conversation with me, but
Yes.
yeah, and pero nakapag-abot pa ta, no? Nag-abot pa ta diri sa
CMU, ma'am.
Yeah, so at least we had some interaction in campus, but I would like you now to introduce more yourself. I'm sure many of your friends would be hopefully watching our conversation later on. And please do introduce yourself more.
Yes, thank you, Ma'am Joy, for the opportunity. And by the way, everyone, myself is very honored to be part of these conversations with Ma'am Joy. And Ma'am, the pleasure is mine as always. I mean, looking back sa mga previous mo na mga personalities, they were really big times. A few of them are actually my friends, but I know for a fact that they are really very into their profession as well. So it's a lot of pressure also on my part. However, I kind of accept the challenge because parang I love conversations because I believe that especially in this time of pandemic, conversations in such in one way or another have helped a lot of people cope up with mental challenges or mental health issues, and these kind of conversations will at least nurture our minds and will really help us get through these challenges that we have. Okay, and by the way, for those who don't know me, I'm Ariel Guico. My friends called me RR for short. And
RR Resort?
Yes. Hopefully I own the resort, ma'am, no, but unfortunately I don't own the resort. However, yes, I am a veterinarian by profession. And most of my colleagues in the field ventured into small animal practice, yung parang companion animals, but me, I decided to be on the more on the livestock aspect of the industry, ma'am. So I'm a poultry and at the same time swine veterinarian because siguro after I got my license, I reflected on what field will I choose, and I reflected that one of my passions really is on more on the food security part. So it is my passion, ma'am, that everyone or every Filipino have a sufficient and safe food on their tables.
Yeah, in that sense, then we really do agree because that's also one of my foremost advocacies now about food and nutrition security. Sige, although we're dealing with different species, you deal with animals and I basically deal with plants. Sige,
Yes.
what else? So with that, with your work, what's your coverage again? You travel often even during the pandemic, right?
Yes, ma'am. So basically, I belong to one of the country's poultry integrator. So right now, I'm handling the commercial feeds division of Visayas in Mindanao actually, but right now it's quite of impossible for me to travel Visayas given the situation. So most of my time during the pandemic, I still roam around Mindanao, traversing to the lands of Jensan, Davao, and even just last week, Caraga region.
Wow.
So one of the features of my job, ma'am, is I try to monitor farms using our products. I make sure that these farms will receive the most or utmost health conditions. So whenever there are also troubles pertaining to our products, I will be the one to assess and do recommendations to our farmers. And
Yeah.
aside, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So that's my
So,
job.
apparently your sense of accountability and responsibility, which you have cultivated early on as a student leader in CMU, continue to be part of your lifestyle. So the fact that in spite of the limitations, travel limitations, travel difficulties, you do what you do. But we'll talk about your job later on, and
Yes, sure.
I may ask you a few controversial questions later on, but about the animal industry.
Yeah, I hope
But
I can answer that also.
no, but just a few, just maybe. I was just thinking when you were, introducing yourself. But let's go back muna because just like what I said in my previous conversations, most of the people I really talk to seem to really be linked with CMU. You are another CMU alum, and I did
Yes,
mention
po.
that you were a student regent.
Mhm.
When did you graduate, and when were you the SSC chair, by the way?
I graduated last 2015, ma'am, and during if I can still remember, it was in 2013 school year 2013-2014 that I was the student regent of CMU.
I see. So you
Mm-mm.
did. I thought that because often, no, often the SSC chairs usually are in their senior year, although for the vets you have 6 years in school, and
Mm.
usually that's usually the trend. But you were then sort of in your second to the last year before graduation that you were an SSC chair. So that's kind of interesting. So
Yes, ma'am.
you were very young then, right?
But in my case, ma'am, if a vet med student is the student regent, it's kind of older compared to the other one because we were like few years parang above their their age because basically SCC president are on their fourth or third year. So we back then we are fifth to sixth year when we had the position.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So I'm very curious, recalling your year, your entire school year as a student regent. What is the word that you can associate with you and your responsibility being a student regent? Is there a word that you can, just one word that you
Yeah.
can associate with being a student regent?
I think, ma'am, the very word that I can associate with the whole time that I was a student regent was pakikisama.
Mm.
And I was really inspired by our president that time, Ma'am Sullivan, that she was really parang yung kanyang tawag nito. Napag-Tagalog ako ulit.
Sure, go ahead.
Napag-Tagalog. So parang I was inspired by her, parang yung mantra niya during her time also, ma'am, that was, if I'm not mistaken, transformational leadership.
Yes.
And during that time, I anchored my leadership style on servant leadership as well. And the leadership style that I have was basically understanding what are the needs of the students, what are the needs of my co-leaders when I was still in the president, because I've been handling counselors, college counselors. I mean, when you handle these kinds of people, they are very diverse in a way.
Right.
So, ma'am, so what I learned about that is you have to really understand them. And by that time that you understand them, you will be able to create strategies on how to handle them. And when you have that project or an event that you have to deal with or you have to lead, then you will be able to assess, dito ka pwede kasi based on your strength and weaknesses. Parang you are more of this type of person. So parang that was one of my strategies during the time that I was the president, ma'am.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for that, because that's an that's a thing for me to think about, no? Because definitely we differ in personality.
yeah.
Maybe that's the reason why you were a well-respected SSC president and student regent, because you have that kind of philosophy. And maybe that's also the thing that makes you also a successful vet. Remember, my goodness, the entire island of Mindanao, and hopefully when things become normal, even the Visayas region would also be your area for service and work. So maybe that's something that, yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So I'm curious to know, what's one of your best memories as a student in CMU?
I've been in CMU for like half of my life, ma'am, because I also finished my secondary education at the laboratory high school.
Right.
But I think the entirety of my stay, I can say that there's a lot actually, ma'am, but I will bank on the moment that I was still in third year high school, that I have this, I could say, very amazing advisor. I don't know if you know her, si Ma'am Rhea Agravio. She's one of our parang motivator that time when we were in high school. I mean, the way that she handled our class, parang it gives us that kind of motivation to pursue our dreams, to pursue our passion. And I right now, I think that she's very happy that a lot of us were actually excelling in the fields of our practice.
Very good. No, unfortunately, I don't know her. Maybe I know her by face, no, but it's kind of impossible to know everybody in CMU, the faculty, because there are, almost 1,000 faculty in CMU, including the CMU LHS faculty. So there's a lot of people. But I'm glad, no, I think it is a common theme for many of us who pursued, higher learning, that there was at least always one teacher who had influenced us on a very positive way. So have you always wanted to be a vet, or you were thinking of other professions before? Because, okay.
So actually, the very reason why I ventured into veterinary medicine, again, going back to high school, I kasi parang it is impossible for you to know Ma'am Rhea Agravio because she is not part of the teaching staff anymore of CMU. She went abroad. But I know for a fact that you know Ma'am Lalaine Sariana.
Yes, of course, Lalaine. Another
Yeah, she's
wonderful young faculty.
She's
Although not
our
very young anymore.
She's one of our biology teachers back then in high school, ma'am. And the moment that I entered, that was, I think, again, second year high school. She was the one handling biology, and I was really very interested on the topics that she presented. And wow, parang I felt that this kind of thing is for me. Like, I want to explore things related to biology. And then when I think about it, I have to, like, weigh things, ma'am, kung ano ba yung kaya din ng parents ko when they will send me to school. So basically, I really wanted to be a medical doctor, a human medical doctor, but I tried to weigh things, and I want to have that application of biology.
Right.
And so one of the choices that really parang top of my choices was to pursue a course in biology in MSU IIT. But during that time, my mom kind of did not allow me to be there.
So far.
Because, yeah, but her reason is also because of the unstable peace and order of the place that time. So parang kinondisyon ko na yourself ko nga, I will be really studying first in CMU. So when I try to evaluate again what are the courses in CMU that is in line with what I am passionate about, so my choices would be the DVM, BS Bio, and BS Chemistry. And then that time I was praying to God when I took the SIMOCAT that if I will have the chance to qualify for the program of DVM, and that's the good sign that I will be in the curriculum or in the course. So luckily,
because DVM requires actually a higher SIMOCAT score, right?
yes, ma'am. 90 percentile rank, to be exact, if I'm not mistaken.
That's a high requirement.
Yeah, so the moment that I received the SIMOCAT score, and it's just walang labis, walang kulang. So parang it's an answered prayer for me.
Okay, the affirmation.
Yes, without a doubt. So I really enrolled directly. So yeah, that's the reason why I.
All right. So shout out to Lelaine for having a positive impact also in your life, no?
Yes,
shaping your mind to love life, to be very interested about life and living organisms. So before you became a vet, did you have pets already, or have you loved both animals and plants, aside from you loving people, of course?
Maybe more on biology in general, ma'am. I love plants, parang experiments related to biology. Everything is the cell, amazing. Everything in biology is really interesting.
Right. So now that you just mentioned biology, so basically, Ariel, can I just call Ariel?
Yes, ma'am.
Ariel wanted to ask me questions about genetics because, of course, my background is then genetics and plant breeding. And so I think he sort of jokingly commented on the Facebook that he would like to ask questions on genetics, and I sort of took his dare. And it could have been a private conversation between the two of us, but now it will become a little bit public. But I thought that it's good. But yes, last night I was, oh my God, it's going to be embarrassing if I can't answer his questions. And then, but I said, well, yeah, it's okay. It's going to be a test also, and a challenge. And maybe this conversation would also be, useful for other people, especially students.
Yes.
The semester is going to start August 9. So next week na, Monday na, mag-uumpisa na ang semester dito sa CMU.
Kaya nga, ma'am, nakakamiss din mag-aral, actually.
Yeah, you know what? You could always come in, and because right now, before we go to your questions, right now,
yes, po.
At least in the courses that I teach and in our program, we entertain the opportunity for guest lecturers. So we have good alums, and many of them are very willing to come in, share about their experience, or especially, for example, if there are alums who are doing very good in research in their careers, and we can keep track of their pathway, then we always say, how about if you know speak, because now it's possible, because it's possible to now, even if they're far away,
Yeah.
so they can still share. So now it's going to be more meaningful for the students, because here's somebody who has had an opportunity to sort of practice what he learned in college, in school, and use it for his current profession. So that's why we welcome a guest lecturer. So maybe, I don't know, I always believe that alumni of the university should be co co-nurturers of current
Mhm.
students. That's what I always believe. So maybe
That's
there's an
very,
opportunity for you.
yes, ma'am. That's very interesting, especially that when I am still a student, it's very helpful when, aside from your teachers, of course, and your professors, you always have that parang mixture of everything from people who are really practicing the field. So parang, especially that in the profession that we have, ma'am, very diverse din yung learning. So I think
Right.
that's a great move for you, ma'am.
Yeah, and hopefully not just for me, but considering that since you graduated in 2015, you have at least around 5 years under your 5 years of work experience under your belt, and you sharing the most important lessons you learned as a practicing vet can
Mhm.
also be very nurturing and very important para sa mga current vet students. So
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, I wish I could, I could I could influence your current dean, who is Dr. Melrose Condino. But hopefully they're thinking of that kind of another
Set up.
opportunity. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so
So let's start.
oh my God. Sige, okay, so you have a set of questions for me on genetics, and I will try to
Yes.
answer, and I'll try to explain the best I could. But I also
Mhm.
have a few questions after for you, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
All right.
noted. But
Okay.
before anything else, ma'am, I would like also to make a shout out that my professors before who handled genetics are also Ma'am Lalaine Sariana and of course your dear friend Dr. Ruby Destajo.
Ate Ruby, of course, I call her Ate Ruby. How is, oh my God, I haven't, yeah, we'll talk about her later.
Yes, so
Sige.
those are my learnings in genetics are basically sourced out from them.
Okay.
So these are all very random, ma'am, but I think very easy to answer for you.
No, no, no. I'm hoping that your questions are the things you want to
Yeah.
learn more, di ba?
Mm-mm. Yes,
Because,
ma'am.
like, how many subjects in genetics have you had in college? One or two?
One only, ma'am. The principles
Ah,
of animal breeding only.
okay. So you
Yeah.
had your basic genetics, taught
In
by
high
the,
school.
mao ba?
Yes,
Sige,
ma'am.
sige. All right, I'll do my best. Although, remember that I deal with plants, you deal with animals. Sige.
But
But
basically, the concepts I think are very similar.
right.
So
But
yeah.
if ever I need to give you examples, I'm so sorry. I may be just giving you examples on plants.
Yes, ma'am. That would be fine.
All right.
So okay.
Oh my
My
God, this is
first
funny.
question, ma'am, will be on the topic on dominant and recessive characteristics of traits. So I'm just very curious because before when I was still in a student, I mean there are specific traits that are recessive and there are specific traits that are dominant. But my question, ma'am, is what are the bases in the determination whether the trait is dominant or recessive to start with? So,
Okay.
di ba,
Wow.
ma'am, very simple lang.
That's a simple question. But then, according to Einstein, if you
Mm-mm.
cannot explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't fully understand it yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
It's easy to explain things, especially if you use jargons and terminologies in your field, but you have to avoid doing that. So your
Yeah.
question was, what determines, okay, I'm going to rephrase it. What
Yes po.
determines a dominant trait and a recessive trait? Is that the right way to paraphrase your question? Or
Yes,
you can,
ma'am.
or you can repeat your question.
Okay, ma'am. So what are the bases in the determination whether a trait is dominant or recessive? Because my example, ma'am, for instance, in the Philippines, for instance, the brown eyes is, I don't know if I'm I'm right. The brown eyes is dominant over other colors of eyes, but in other countries, is this the same or not? Or I'm kind of confused.
Should be because
Mm-mm.
yeah, there are different colors of eyes. Range would be, let's say, purple, gray, blue, and
Mm-mm.
then hazel, which is close to brown, and then of course black. So they would also, it's a range. No, the fact that there are more than two colors of eye,
Mm-mm.
tama ba yun? Retina
Yes,
ba yun?
ma'am.
Retina actually. So it
Mm-mm.
means that it's not governed by just one simple gene. So there could be more than just one gene. But that's not your question. Your question is on how to determine a dominant trait and a recessive trait. Okay.
Yes.
So to do that, that's normally our, what we do. So when you do a genetic investigation, normally what we do is to make a cross. So sa plants, it's very easy to do
Mm-mm.
because dili man okay na ka mamilig in any nga plant basta naglahi sila sa trade. But
Yes
for
po.
it's different. It's different for people because you cannot just mate people.
For this one. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
I understand.
and animals, medyo okay lang sa animals. So to
Mm-mm.
determine whether a trait is dominant or recessive, so let me just give you an example sa plant system. So normally you do what we call a monohybrid cross. You do a
Yes,
cross.
ma'am.
And the
Mm-mm.
simplest type of cross is what we call a monohybrid cross. So
Yes po.
it is a test wherein you check on one trait that you are hypothesizing to be governed by just one gene. So
Po.
controlled lang siya sa usa ka gene. And
Mm-mm.
when you choose the two parents, the two plants, they should differ in the two traits. No, just
Yes.
one trait, but they should differ in the two phenotypes. So if
Mm-mm.
we talk about, can I now give an example on plants?
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Okay, so for example, in soybean,
Mm-mm.
so a soybean plant that has a purple flower, okay, and then a soybean plant that has a white flower. Although there are other, flower colors for soybean. So you
Yes, ma'am.
choose one plant that has purple flowers, and then you choose one plant that has white flowers, and you would
Mm-mm.
like to determine which of the purple or the white is the dominant phenotype for
Yes
the
po.
trait that is called flower color. Okay,
Mm-mm.
although we know that already, but just to give an example.
Mm-mm.
Now, before you finalize your cross, you need to make sure that, just like what Mindel did, okay,
Mm-mm.
you need to make sure that your plant is really pure. Tama?
Mm.
So you have
Yes.
to make sure you have to backtrack a little bit. Now, you grow this plant, make sure that this plant really just bears purple flowers
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't have any other flowers or other flower color. And then you do the same for white.
Yeah.
And when you are assured that they are pure lines, which is also called inbred or homozygous, do you remember the term
Yes,
homozygous?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if they are pure lines or homozygous, then now you're ready to cross them. Okay? So when you do hybridization, and you know that already because
Mm.
plants have reproductive structures also.
Yeah.
And just to review, they are the female is pistil, and the
Mm-mm.
male would be called stamen. Tama?
Yeah.
And so you cross them. In the F1, in the first filial generation, okay, the phenotype that you will see should be the dominant. Assuming that,
Okay.
yeah, so in the F1, the first
Mm-hmm.
filial generation progeny, the phenotype that you see should be the dominant phenotype, okay?
Mm.
Assuming, of course, your hypothesis is that this follows a simple pattern of inheritance. And of
Mm-mm.
course, the simple pattern of inheritance is Mendelian.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But then that you cannot make a solid conclusion on the F1.
Mm.
Okay. Assuming that we're doing the traditional test, the
Yes
traditional
po.
test, plants to
Mm-mm.
plants lang. So you need to go to the second generation, we call F2.
Yeah.
Okay. In order to get the seeds of the F2 seeds, you have to self-pollinate your soybean. Soybean na akong gihatag ng example.
Opo.
No? All
Mm-mm.
right. So anyway, soybean is self-pollinating. So you don't have to worry. It will, once they would fertilize the flowers, self-fertilize the flowers, then the seeds will be produced. And then you
Mm-mm.
harvest the seeds, and then you grow the seeds. That would be your second generation.
Okay.
So when you grow your plants in the second generation, you see them and you allow them to reach reproductive stage. And for example, if you have 100 F2 plants, then you have to phenotype. That's the term that we call. You have to
Yeah.
examine the plant, every plant one by one, and phenotype their flowers. So you have to record how many have purple flowers
White. Oh,
and how
yeah.
many have white. So, and then you get the actual count, the actual frequency. And then you try to see whether the purple fits or would be around 75% of the population. And the number of plants that bear the white flowers would be around 25% of the population. So if our N is exactly 100, then ideally it should be 75 plants that would bear purple flowers. And ideally 25 plants would bear white flowers.
Yes.
So 75 versus 25. Or technically you learned and you remember Mendel's ratio of 3:1.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
3/4 by 1/4. However, in real life, no, things are not ideal and exact. So it's never going to be 75 by 25. So maybe it could be around less than 75 or more than 75 for the purple bearing flower plants. And for those that bear white flowers, it could be more than 25 plants or less than 25 plants. So there is variation to your expected 75 by 25 ratio. So you have to subject your data to chi-square. The chi-square test, which is the test for the goodness of fit. That even if you see variation, whether above the 75 or less than 75 or above 25, less than 25, somehow the variation would still fit the 3:1 ratio. And that is decided by statistics.
Yeah.
So if the variation would be not significant, then you can declare that, yes, the ratio is still 3:1. And once you get that result, then you can now have a more solid conclusion to say that the purple phenotype for flower color is indeed the dominant phenotype versus the white. So as simple as that.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a very in-depth parang explanation and very parang visual in a way kasi parang in-imagine ko din yung phenotypic ratio niya, genotypic ratio. So
but there's the funny thing. Sige, of course this is the kind of lecture that a little bit of joke that we sort of tease our students. Especially because students would always be interested about human genetics. So we know already that, for example, having dimples is dominant over having no dimples. Tama? That has been done by genetic studies already. And then having the widow's peak is dominant versus having no widow's peak.
Round,
and having a cleft chin is dominant over having no cleft chin. So we always have this funny joke, especially in the first week of class for genetics, to sort of, ask the student, okay, do your parents have dimples? Especially if we notice that, the student has dimples. Let us say the student has dimples. So we ask him, hey, which among your parents have dimples? And then, what if the answer is no, I don't have parents who have dimples?
Ampon.
and then we would all say, how come? How come? Because the dominant phenotype should always show in the F1. In the F1. Remember that we are the F1 of our parents. So at least one of our parents should have dimples. If we have dimples, do you have dimples, Ariel? Sorry.
I don't have.
Okay. So do you have, are your parents, okay, sige, you don't have dimples. Sige.
Yes.
So how about your parents? Do they have dimples or they have no dimples?
No dimples at all.
Okay.
Legit.
What about if one of your parents has dimples? Or what about if your parents have dimples and you don't have a dimple?
Maybe I got the recessive trait.
Well, exactly. Having no dimples means that you have a recessive trait. Okay? But then, how will you explain that if your parents both have dimples? No, this is theoretical because you just told me that your parents don't have dimples. So
Yeah.
I'm asking you, how about if your parents actually, both your parents have dimples? How come you don't have dimples?
Baka kasi yung ano nila, ma'am, hindi sila ano ba yun, monozygous yung cross nila. Baka isa sa parents ko ay ano siya, ma'am, parang hybrid heterosis siya. So, meron pa rin siyang recessive tsaka dominant. So, sa cross ng parents, there is still a possibility na I won't inherit the dimples. Am I right, ma'am?
You almost got it. But
But not quite.
mag-reason out to go, otherwise you will be not legit, di ba? No. In that the possibility is that even if your parents have, both your parents have dimples, each of your parents would be heterozygote. Okay?
Yeah.
Tama ka, the word is hybrid, which means that each one of them have the dominant allele
And
for dimples and also the recessive allele. So both of them, let us say if dimples would be represented by the D gene symbol, so each of the parents would have the dominant D and the recessive D.
Yeah.
And both of them should have that. For them to be able to produce you,
yeah, I get it.
that doesn't have dimples, diba? You have, therefore, your parents would always have 25% probability every time your mom gets pregnant. The baby always has 25% probability to have no dimples, but 75% probability to have dimples.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the same, similar to plants, but different way to sort of think about, because sa plants we can look at an entire population. Tama? But for animals and humans, we can only consider one individual.
Yeah.
So okay. I hope I did not alarm you.
That's okay, ma'am. Okay lang ba yung question ko, ma'am? Hindi naman siya di ba? Parang para to make some sort of clarifications lang din.
Sure. Although see, the struggle is how to simplify it. But you know, you have a high level. You're intelligent, and you have a high level of understanding. And you, come on, you're a doctor. You're a vet. So, but the challenge for me is, can I explain it to my pamangkins, who are 9 years old, 7 years old?
Yeah, that will be like
12 years
interesting.
Yeah.
So, ano lang yun, ma'am, if that's the case, you have to really simplify it, like the color, so parang the things that they can perceive for the meantime. But as they go on, I'm sure they will also find the interest.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm not teaching elementary, okay?
Me too, ma'am, actually, and even preschool, it's so challenging, even to like help them understand basic concept of arithmetic and reading. My God, it's very difficult.
Yeah, but one thing I learned, Ariel, is kids really love stories. Of course, adults also love stories. But I always see this different, light in my pamangkin's eyes when I would say, once upon a time, when you do storytelling, you always start with once upon a time. Once upon a time, and they get so like, they pay attention to your once upon a time. So good na kag-storya when you say once upon a time. It's very hard to invent a story,
That's another skill to discover, Ma'am Joy.
Yeah. Okay, sige Doc. Pumasa ba ako? Sige, pumasa ako.
Of course, ma'am. My next question, ma'am, given these traits, these dominant and recessive traits, can dominant traits considered superior over recessive traits, or not at all time?
Okay. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. It means that you are very curious. Okay, not all the time. So that is why there are what we call non-Mendelian concepts, or non-Mendelian, non-Mendelian patterns of inheritance. Because for Mendel, remember Mendel is always associated with complete dominance. Okay? But not all dominant phenotypes are 100% dominant over the recessive. So one example is the codominance. Okay, so there's the codominance phenomenon, and there's also the incomplete dominance phenomenon. Okay, so I'm sure that was mentioned in your classes before, but you just sort of forgot.
True. So like I am like recalling it, but yeah, the terminologies are very Parang familiar, but I couldn't recall it anymore, ma'am.
Okay, sige. So let's go back to what I said. So Mendel is known for although technically Mendel is known for two principles or laws: principle of segregation, principle of independent assortment. But other people would give him a third principle, would attribute to him another principle, which is the principle of dominance.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but Mendel's contribution to the science of genetics is about complete dominance, and the reason for that is because he studied traits that really showed complete dominance over the recessive. So that is why he was not able to anticipate that there are also other traits in plant species and animal species that cannot show 3:1 ratio in the F2. Okay. So let me talk about incomplete dominance first. All right. So, okay, another example. Fun na naman to, ha? Sorry.
Go, ma'am.
Okay. Let's go back to still flower colors kasi very visual, di ba, ang flower colors. So, assuming that I selected two different plants. One produces a very vivid red flower.
Yeah.
And one produces another white flower, which is unpigmented, the complete mutation, diba? The loss of pigmentation. So technically, white is okay. Plants having white flowers, and then there are plants that exist with, let's say, fully vibrant, whatever color they show. Having the white flowers means it's the complete loss of the ability to produce the pigment. So that is complete mutation. Now, if assuming that I also prepared pure lines of the red flower plant and the white colored plant, and then I cross them again. So parents, and then you cross them. Now, if let's say you would assume that the dominant should be the red, assuming Anna, but then you don't see the red. What you see is pink. Okay, what you see is pink, a diluted version of the red, a highly diluted version of the red. Let's just say the red is magenta red, so that's deep red, diba?
Yes.
But your F1, the first failure generation plants, produced flowers that are, let's say, just pink.
Yeah.
That tells you that that is your first hint that the flower color could be governed by an incomplete dominant gene. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but you cannot stop at the F1. You have to again go to the confirmatory generation. And for some people, even they go to the F3 generation just so that they could really fully confirm. Okay. Now, assuming that these are all traditional genetic studies. Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine pila ka seasons, no? If one cropping season is about 3 months, then growing the parents, testing whether they are pure lines, and then making the faucet second, and then, oh my God, so
it's a long,
yes, long.
It's a long process, yun.
Right. So when you go to the F2, should you expect a 75%, 25% distribution? No. Okay. If you will see in the second generation 25, 50, and 25, which means that 25% of the plants in the second generation would show, the
deep red.
The deep red. 25% of the population would show the white, and then 50% of the population would show the pink. Then that's what we call the 1/4 is to 1/2 is to 1/4 ratio.
Yes,
or what we call 25-50 or 1:2:1, diba? If you see that and you do again the check, you do the actual count, frequency count, and then you do the chi-square test, and then it is not significant, it fits. When we say it fits, it means that you propose that it follows the ratio of 1:2:1. Okay, 1/4 completely dominant, 1/2 heterozygote dominant, which is showing the pink, and then 1/4 homozygous recessive. And if your chi-square test would show NS, then that is the confirmation that indeed, this is showing the incomplete dominance pattern of inheritance. So, kana sa plants, murag dili na kay na siya harmful. But think about other important human traits, no? what kind of traits wherein you would like, you don't want incomplete dominance? I don't know. For example, if let's say normality versus if the dominant G allele gives you a normality for something, and then
Yeah.
recessive gives you a disease. Tama?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you would like sana the complete dominance, that whenever you have
Mm.
the dominant allele, you will be normal. You are safe from the disease. Tama?
Yes, ma'am.
And there will you will get the disease only when you get the recessive from both parents, and that is 25% probability. Tama?
Yes, ma'am.
But it's scary when a disease could come up, moderate ang effect because it is showing the incomplete dominance pattern of inheritance. Okay? So
Yeah, yeah.
that is, so incomplete dominance is one phenomenon that doesn't follow, that answers your question, your second question. The other
Okay.
thing is codominance.
Mm.
The other thing is codominance. So if I get it correctly, my God, I hope. But anybody who is listening to this conversation,
For a while, I see for a while, mama.
Sure. Trying to remember an example for animals about codominance. But just to if anybody who will be watching this video or listening to this conversation later on, if I am not correct, you can always comment and let me know what is
Yes, let us know.
Let us
Comment
know.
in the chat box.
Yes. So okay, sige. Another phenomenon is codominance. So from the term itself, the dominant allele could produce the gene product. So do you understand how the gene product, do you remember how the gene product is produced? So you have the gene, which is DNA, and then it is transcribed to become mRNA. Tama?
Yes, ma'am.
RNA, and then the messenger RNA is translated to become a protein. So the protein is the gene product, the ultimate gene product.
Okay.
So, and then the recessive allele for codominance is also transcribed and translated. So it means that both gene products are present in the cell.
Yes, ma'am.
So the protein coming from the dominant allele and the protein coming from the recessive allele are present in the cell. So that's why we can say it's codominance. Okay, so for example, because I don't know the exact breed for cattle pero I usually call the cattle kanang polka dots or malitan na polka dots.
Okay, parang Holstein Friesian ata, ma'am.
Oh yeah, whatever. I call them Dalmatian cows.
Yeah.
I really don't know about animals, about animals. So, diba there are spots. So in the part of the animal, okay, in those parts of the animal where there is no pigmentation, so diba made up of cells. The skin is made up of cells.
Yes, ma'am.
So those cells are not showing. So this is another concept of codominance. Those cells are not showing the dominant allele product. So what is expressed more would be the recessive allele. That is why it's a white, let's say, white background and you have spots.
Yeah.
So in the areas wherein you have spots, then that's where the dominant allele is fully functional to show the pigmentation. Although that's a very different way of explaining things. Oh my
That's
God.
okay, ma'am. Parang I get the gist naman of it, ma'am, na they will parang exhibit both of the traits in one picture.
Or the phenotypes. Actually, we call it phenotypes, no? Because when we say trait, let us say the color of your eyes would be the trait.
Okay.
And then the different colors of the eyes are called the phenotypes of the trait, the different variations of that particular trait.
Okay, I get
so
it.
that's the terminology. So, so let's say if you look at your hair, ang ganda pa naman ng hair mo ngayon. So sa hair there are I think there are as many as 4 alleles for hair. Yeah, four so the gene for hair is multi-allelic. So more than 2 alleles. So the afro curly hair, the very kinky curly hair, to the curly and the wavy and the straight. So mga yan,
Okay.
diba? Yeah.
Mm-mm.
But why am I talking about hair? Sorry, unconnected sa aking codominance type.
That's okay, ma'am. That's the beauty of random conversations. Actually,
Okay, sige. Oh my God, how many questions did you prepare?
just
That's,
4 actually.
yay, 4, because see, I prepared 5 questions for you.
Oh no. Okay, so I think you did naman very good explanation about it, ma'am. I think I have this concept about codominance and incomplete dominance. Am I right, ma'am? At least
Oh,
meron ako mga takeaways.
oh, before you go to your third question, remember, because there's something that is really bothering me. Remember, I always tell you that assuming that we follow the traditional way of doing genetic analysis, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I mentioned when I
Mm.
tried to answer your first question and when I tried to answer your second question. So the traditional way of doing genetic analysis would be to do the planting, to do the crossing,
Mm.
etc. But another way to reduce, because there are now new methods, diba? There are now
Okay.
new methods. So you don't have to wait until the plant would be this, mature before you can get the seeds and you can get confirmation. So I use the term phenotype, and when we look at traits physically, that's what we mean by phenotyping. So
Mm.
so we have transformed the term phenotype, which is supposed to be just a noun, and we have
Mm.
made it into a verb. So when you characterize plants or living organisms, humans, animals, and looking at their, physical traits or phenotypes, then that's
Mm-hmm.
what we call phenotyping. The other
Mm-mm.
way now is to do genotyping. So
Mm.
remember the term genotype? Genotype would be the genetic constitution of an organism. So for example, you don't have dimples. So
Mm.
your genotype is that you're recessive for the dimple gene. Tama?
Yes.
Okay. So when we
Small
say,
letter D. D.
assuming that D is the symbol for dimples,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And then, but there's also what we call genotyping, because when we can profile the DNA,
Mm-hmm.
tama? So DNA fingerprinting, DNA profiling, and then we can utilize now molecular markers and not just visual markers, because when we look at whether you have dimples or not, that is visual marker.
Yes, ma'am.
But we can also now use molecular markers, just looking at your DNA and markers associated with a particular trait. So
Mm.
if a particular molecular marker would show up in the electrophoresis, you're familiar
Mm-hmm.
with electrophoresis, then you can
Mm.
say, okay, this particular marker is associated with this particular trait.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
So
Mm.
there are actually markers that we can use to confirm. You don't have to go to the F2 anymore. You don't have to grow,
Mm-hmm.
prepare an area, plow the area, grow the seeds, etc., and then wait for the plant to flower before you can confirm. And then you
Mm.
count. Because technically speaking, when you do DNA profiling, you can grow your seeds up to maybe 2 weeks,
Yeah.
collect 1 or 2 leaves, extract the DNA, tama? And
Mm.
then genotype in the laboratory, and then use some particular markers that will confirm that, yeah, we can see based on the DNA profile that 75% indeed of the samples show the marker for the purple flower, or 25% of the DNA samples show the marker for the white flower. So that is the non-traditional way, the modern way of making genetic analysis, and that is genotyping. But you still have to grow some plants,
But
tama?
not that long
But
anymore.
not yet. Exactly, not that entire cropping season. Okay. Because you have to wait for the seeds to mature before you can grow the next generation, right? And
Yes, ma'am.
that takes time. Okay. So I'm just trying to explain that.
Well, actually, that's very interesting, ma'am, because right now, as we all know, we're really into genetic engineering right now, and even in the animal industry, we've been. I know you're very passionate about genetically modified organisms, and people didn't know that we are actually eating the products of GMO already, and even in the animal industries. Let's say, for instance, in broiler chickens, genetic companies have invested a lot of technologies uh, in selecting the best trait into this one kind of chicken so that they will grow in the less period of time with the specifications that we need. Let's say, ganito lang na level ng kanilang timbang, that they will able to harvest them. So parang efficient yung production natin. So ayun. So very interesting, ma'am. So I hope that I could apply this in the animal segment, but parang wala akong resources masyado.
But I think your company, in terms of diagnostics, it's really very helpful, no?
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar if there are already breeds that are commercialized in the Philippines that are animal breeds that are products of GE. I only know about the plant. So currently in the Philippines, we have, of course, the BT corn and then the RR corn. Okay, so those are approved. And I think golden rice is ready. I think golden rice is about ready to be introduced to the public. I think I'm not yet very sure. I need to read up the recent news about golden rice. But for the animal breeds, hindi ako masyadong sure.
Yeah.
But
pero sa broilers kasi for the meantime, ma'am, meron kasi ng mga genetic companies na available na parang they sell this breed. So I would assume that they really doing genetic engineering already, or parang yun. Kasi they will tell us na ito yung ina-assure ng breed namin, so they are developing a breed, so that's why I would assume that it's already a product of genetic engineering.
Yeah, okay. Can we, it's not a segue, but it's sort of related, but I never thought we would be able to, we have the opportunity to do this. Can you, before we go to your third question, can I just explain a little bit about the GMO and the GE?
Go, ma'am.
Okay, sige. So there has been a lot of misconception about, GMO, genetically.
That's actually my next question. Yung parang mga mythbusters na gusto mong
Okay, so you just, sige. What's your third question?
So parang what are really the parang myth about GMOs that you want the people to know na these are fallacies? I mean, this is GMO and these are not GMO. Parang ganun mo. Okay. So parang mythbusters.
All right. So when we talk about genetics and animal breeding or plant breeding, those are very dynamic sciences. And sometimes there's no way to catch up the recent publications, to catch up reading the recent publications, but based so far on what I know. So if I may just, thank you for the question, Ariel. So let's just talk about what GMO first, genetically modified organism, because it saddens me a little bit that there are still a significant number in our communities, in our society, who may have misconceptions what GMO really is. So this is really to be very literal and technical about it. All crops that we have, all varieties of crops and all breeds of animals technically we can call them genetically modified organisms. Okay, the word modified means it could mean many different ways. Improvement, improved, changed, changed, diba? The fact that you modify something, it means that you modify it to become better, a better version of the original version. So if we talk about the animal species that you deal with, so think about the wild type of the cat or the dog or the pigs or the swine. Pigs din pala yung swine, sorry, or the poultry. Sorry, if you remember the forms of the wild types, yung pinaka-original. So I think the very common example we can think about would be the wild pig, the wild boar.
Yes, ma'am.
The difference between the wild boar and the common swine that we now have in poultries, they look very different, tama?
Yes, ma'am.
So the modification of species either happened through natural evolution, coupled with human intervention through selection and breeding, diba? Because evolution is always part of nature. And then early humans practiced selection. and then domestication. Tama? They selected for this, they selected for this, and then they domesticated the types of the species, whether animals or plants, that they liked.
Yes,
And then
ma'am.
that's why they invented agriculture. And then here comes, we learn about science. So we learn about the science of genetics and a lot of other sciences. So now breeding comes in. So it's now evolution, selection, and then the science of animal breeding or plant breeding. So these are the three major components or factors that have modified whether animal species and plant species through time. So what we always say sa plant breeding is that plant breeding is, directed, targeted, and fast-tracked evolution. Because evolution is always about changing things to make the species better for a particular changing environment. If I'm not mistaken in simplifying the concept of evolution, di ba?
Yes, ma'am.
But when we do animal breeding or plant breeding, we look at like, okay, how can we further improve an existing species, an existing variety or breed, so that this could become more useful to a particular niche of people or a set of consumers or for the changing environment. So for example, the climate is changing these days.
Yes, ma'am.
It's good for us when we talk about increase in temperature because, we can always fan ourselves, drink water, or have air conditioning system or have electric fans. But especially for plants are rooted to the ground. Tama?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
how animals, you can put them in air condition. I found it funny to read about news that some Wagyu beef are put in air conditioned facilities. Oh my God. Kami diri wala air conditioning. May pang beef, may pang cattle, hindi na air conditioning pa. Sorry.
Well, actually, it is true also in pigs and in poultry, ma'am. I mean, if you're familiar with controlled climate system, so ganon, meron.
Yeah, so
Because
that's good if companies or farmers have that capability, because the same can be done for plants also. You can put them in greenhouses and greenhouses where you can control climate, weather, temperature, and sunlight and RH. But most of our farmers and most of our livestock raisers are still,
in the backyard.
doing things in the field or in the backyard. So that's why it is it is our responsibility, if we talk about the animal breeders and the plant breeders, to think how we can improve on the natural. It's genetics is natural, eh? It's very organic. You're not using any synthetics. You're just trying to utilize good genes from other.
Yes, selection.
To select, to identify, oh, it has the good gene, or he has the good gene. Okay. Sorry. This particular plant has a good gene which can be utilized by another plant, something like that. So basically, going back to the GMO, so everything is actually GM. That is our simple consensus, because there is no original breed or variety of animal or plant. So if you talk about the brassicas, like, the brassica vegetables, some of them used to have spines, but you're not going to eat petchay with, sorry, brassica. Sorry. So walay tanom nga karon ga-exist which have become fully domesticated that were in their original form. So they have been modified. Their genes have been, maybe one genes, a few genes, several genes have been modified either by natural evolution, by selection, and then by breeding, animal or plant breeding. So technically, we have GMs. But I think the controversial thing is, because we now have modern technologies to modify organisms, and many people do not understand what is, genetic engineering, what is a transformation, what is recombinant DNA technology, because they understand hybridization, because they can do it themselves. Like, okay, select two plants, hybridize. As long as you can identify which is the female part of the flower and which is the male part of the flower, you can hybridize, you can try. And for corn, it's very easy. The male is on top, the female is in the middle. And if you talk about animals, I've seen some of my uncles facilitate the breeding of cattle, at the farm before when I was young. So they always have this selected bull sa silingan nga produce gid og maayo nga kuan, nga liwat. nga similya nga liwat, di magkupakit ng similya, so liwat na lang, sorry ha. So, and then they know nga, okay, and then, kana bitong naapa sila ihimuon nga, I don't know, like kulong, para
Yes, ma'am, mag-shoot.
dili mag-move kaayo ang female para dan sa stud. Tama ba na siya? Tama ba na siya?
Sakto, ma'am.
Okay. And then, so we understand that in animals, and of course, that's understandable in humans. That's also understandable in people when we talk about, borrowing genes, exchanging genes, hoping that the progeny, the product would show something better than one of the parents or both parents.
True.
And my challenge always for my students is that I sort of ask them the question. Sometimes they're taken aback. Sometimes they're surprised when I say, oh, you're technically you're the first generation of your parents. Are you better than your parents? Are you a good hybrid? Although, are you a good F1? And then some of them would really just pause. What's the question, Ma'am Joy? Because that's their introduction to genetics. And then sometimes they don't understand fully the question. I said, what traits do you know that you have that when you compare yourself to your parents, you would know that you have a better characteristic than either of your parents or both your parents? It means that you could have the heterosis effect for that particular trait.
Yeah.
So remember, heterosis is about the vigor of the progeny of two parents. Although, anyway, sige, balik na sa GMO. Sorry, Ariel, ha? So,
okay lang, ma'am.
Oo. So, muna siya among ginaingon nga, sometimes, maybe the people just don't fully understand when the new methods are being used to produce better breeds of animals or better varieties of plants, especially kung genetic engineering na, because mas pag engineering, but it's like the same concept for a civil engineer, for a mechanical engineer, for an electrical engineer. Why are you an engineer? Because you think of a better design, and then when you have a better concept, you can imagine a better prototype, a better design, and then you have a blueprint, and you try your blueprint into a prototype, and you can say, oh, this is a better prototype. Tama? That is okay, so civil engineers, and then you can see the usual design of bridges in the country, and then you come up with a better design of bridges, stronger, more structurally stable, less expense. Tama?
Yes.
So that's, you engineer, no? You engineer that. It's almost the same when you think about genetic engineering for animals and for plants. You come up with a better design, a better blueprint for an animal breed or a plant variety. But you know that you will not be using the traditional hybridization. Okay, because we now know more. Of course, there's what we call now, the DNA can be read now, can be sequenced, tama? Ma-sequence na ang gene, mabasa na ang DNA, adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, malocate na ang mga genes, ang kaninga gene nga imong gipangita na adeso sa chromosome na ganito, na sa chromosome na ganito. So, basically, if you need a particular gene, there's a way for you to zero in on that particular chromosome and try to copy or clone that gene, reproduce that several times so that you have extra copies, and then insert that specific gene into your recipient plant or recipient animal without going through many generations of F1, F2, F3, F4. So in traditional breeding, basically, we always say, considering annual plants, you need around 10, 15, 20 years, depending on the method that you will use and depending on the complexity of the trait that you are working on. Because much of the time is spent on evaluating F3, F4, F5. Nandun ba talaga yung desired mo na combination of genes from both parents, if it's traditional. Tama?
Yes,
so evaluation. But if you do the modern way now, once you have engineered specifically a particular gene, added that to the genome. So genome is the entire set of genes of an organism, di ba?
Yes,
and you have identified one particular gene of importance, and you use the methodologies to add that gene into the recipient organism, and then it becomes faster because now you can specifically evaluate and you don't have to go through many seasons evaluation.
True.
You don't even have to grow the entire the entire plant and wait for maturity, because again, you just do DNA profiling. So maybe that's the thing that prevents a lot of people from fully appreciating the technology called genetic engineering. Okay, and that's why it's a challenge really for us to explain the best we can to the students. And I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job, because it's always good when you go to a lecture, you prepare for the lecture. I prepare for the lecture. Let's say on Monday, I have this class on Monday, and it's a genetics class, and I prepare because even if I know the topic, I still have to prepare so that things will be smooth. No, but this is kind of random, so okay. But I hope that if you understood me a little bit, like 50%, then maybe I'm doing a good job.
Yes, I understand you, ma'am. I think parang it makes sense to me now why genetic modification has to take place, because it's a way of our survivability and adaptability to the very changing environment that we have, considering climate change, food security, and all that. I think genetic engineering and even is a way for us to improve efficiency and to have a better world, diba, ma'am?
True. Ano ka talaga? Pang Mr. CMU ka talaga. No, but you actually use you mentioned the word efficiency, because the traditional breeding works for both plants and animals. The methods work actually, but the waiting time is too long, considering that the demands of consumers are quick and fast.
True.
And then imagine, like, let's say today is August 5, 2021. If we're going to start a breeding program today, Ariel, using the traditional breeding method, it means that the breeding objective that we have to design is something that is supposed to be predictive of the need 15 or 20 years from now.
Oh, okay.
Because if we use the traditional breeding method, it means that we will be done, considering that we have enough funding, we will stay in the program, and if ever we leave the program, there will be people who will take over us. But technically, the program will be finished like 15 years from now. So do you think the variety or the breed that we would develop, not so much for the breed, because it's faster for animals, the variety of plant that we could produce 15 years from now, would it be really useful for that particular time? So those are questions that people really need to ponder. But of course, we cannot blame them, because there's so much propaganda about, of course, and no method, whether modern or old, is perfect. So that is why you always know which one to choose best. So for example, I wish we can utilize gene editing to treat a lot of human diseases, a lot of human illness that are caused by genetics, defective gene. But that is still under debate, because some people are always worried about some scientists could be irresponsible or playing God, things like that. But there are technologies that could really have been very useful to people, and a lot of other things. But and another
parang yung issue na yan, ma'am, is very related also to what we experience now against yung vaccination.
Right.
In a way.
Somebody was posting, but the funny thing is that we have been, at least for me, I have a mark here on my left arm that I had been vaccinated as a kid. And that's the reason why I didn't get polio, which used to be very common sa decade, and other things, diba? And then here comes, well, it's about propaganda, and usually propaganda is related to economics.
And even politics.
And politics. And somebody was saying na, sa tungkuan nila, ngano kunong dali na kuno kay nahuman ang vaccine. In less than a year, I think, or less than a year, right?
Yeah.
A vaccine was released. And why? We have new technologies now. So if you think about communication, if you think about communication before, we didn't have smartphones. So, sorry, communication before during my time when I was an undergrad was Telegram. The fastest was Telegram. I'm not sure if you know what a Telegram is. Do you
Parang
know?
parang meron yun dati sa market, ma'am.
See, you don't even know what's a Telegram.
Yung parang may mga ako sa
Yeah,
ba yan?
see, that's the fastest way before when I was a student, an undergrad, a telegram. But the regular way that is affordable to me was to write a letter, wait for 1 week before it will be received by my mother. I'll wait for another week. So 2 weeks basically ang pagitan before I will receive a reply letter from her because we don't have the budget for calls. Although na may calls, katong telephone na nakadikit sa wall or nakadikit sa desk na dili nimo madala bisag asa. So that was our communication system na before, and now we have you can even connect it to a smartwatch or whatever na anak mo sa. See, kan inyong mga unsa tag-ana kanang mga
Bluetooth ka mga AirPods, whatever.
Yes. So I don't understand people who insist na maybe that's not true, maybe it's just really for money matters. Sabi ko, but a lot of technologies have improved. So of course, we expect things to be faster and quicker because we know more, and therefore we can do things better and in a more efficient way. The term is efficiency, which you mentioned. Okay, so
yeah, thank you, ma'am. I can sense a lot of passion whenever you speak about it, and it inspires me also to pursue my passions. Thank you, ma'am,
Are you thinking of pursuing a master's in that?
I'm thinking of pursuing a master in public health, maybe in the next.
That's also good, no? Especially that's actually now part of your work.
Yes, ma'am. So, yun yung parang career path na gusto kong if I will have or if I will embark into a advanced study, so I am thinking of public health.
Right, but if I may add a little bit, sorry, naisip ko lang, Doc Ariel, na.
Yes, ma'am.
Because genes are things that we cannot really see genes. Really, not everybody can see genes unless you are going to read out a sequence of the adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine after sequencing. So not everybody really has access to this higher type of data. So many people cannot imagine what genes are unless we do a good way of explaining things starting at the elementary level, primary education level. Even college students struggle to understand about genes, no? So things that we usually don't see and we cannot imagine. I remember my professor, Dr. Dolores Ramirez. She was our basic genetics in LB, and she would always say, genetics is the science of imagination. So during our time, it was really the science of imagination because we need to imagine.
Yes, ma'am.
Of course, these days now we can see the printout of the, when you can compare one fragment of DNA with another fragment of DNA. You have data like that. You can see printouts and graphs like that. But during our time, it was really very limited. So, di ba, naiginaingon nga, to see is to believe. So, to see is to believe. So, maraming tao, pag hindi nila makita, parang ang hirap intindihin. So, yeah, that's the struggle also that's why the challenge for us is to be able to really simplify the difficult concepts in science. And I hope that we can develop, a better storytelling technique in order to relay the story and to tell accurately the story of new technologies in biology and in genetics.
Yes, I agree, ma'am. So with that, I think one of the basic things that we need to help these kids understanding genetics is to focus more on the importance of cells. I think one of the things also that fascinates me when I was still in my early years was I was really very fascinated by how cells work. So by learning how it works, parang it will give you another dimension of interest to pursue advanced knowledge about cells. So parang yun din parang ko, ma'am, parang naging drive ko to really be so parang passionate also about science and in my field.
Right. So there's cytology, right? So the study of
Yes.
cytology, and you're absolutely correct. I agree with you that one of the most interesting things in the world is the cell itself, whether plant cell or animal cell. The cell itself is a well-oiled machinery. No, it's
Mm-mm.
a well-oiled machinery, and the organelles inside the cell, okay, are also very amazing small
True.
machineries. So I have a question for you before you proceed to your. Di ba sabi mo you have 4 questions for me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna ask you. It's just an intermission question. So if we talk about animals, how many cell organelles have genetic material?
Oh my God, I don't know.
Oh, but okay, sige. But of course, sige, let me rephrase the question. What is the cell organelle that contains chromosomes?
Okay, chromosomes. Cell
Or
organelle, ma'am.
yeah, or
Is it the nucleus, ma'am?
yes, exactly, correct. So the primary organelle that contains the DNA molecules, which are packaged as chromosomes, right, would
Yes, ma'am.
be the nucleus. So plant cells and animal cells and other types of cells, most of them have nuclei.
Mm.
Okay, but there are some other organelles in the cell that also have some genetic material.
Okay, can I guess?
Sure, we can get. So for animals, so there are only 2 organelles that have genetic material. Which other?
Yeah. The RER.
Sorry. It's the mitochondria.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So, marating nagko-quiz show nito, no? Like, if you're gonna have an online quiz show, just joking. So,
Mm.
so the mitochondria, okay, because the hypothesis is that the mitochondria used to be, well, the original mitochondrion used to be a microorganism that had
Mm.
invaded the earliest form of cell, and it had formed symbiosis with the most primitive cell, because remember the mitochondria has the ability to produce energy.
Energy.
So it has the ability to produce extra energy, which an evolving cell, the old cell before, needs in order to evolve into a multicellular organism, something like that.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so for animal cells, the nucleus and the mitochondria, there are hundreds of thousands of mitochondria inside the cell, right? And then
Mm.
for plants, aside from the nucleus and the mitochondria, guess what would be the other organelle that also has some genetic material?
I cannot think of anything.
Okay, that's fine. It's fair enough because you are a vet. So the chloroplasts.
Okay.
Mhm. So now, if you will be asked, so this is how we joke. If you will be asked, what is the genetic contribution of your parents, no? So sa imo, how much was the contribution of your mom and your dad to your
Mm.
genes? Okay.
So, oh my God.
So, and before when I was in high school, my teacher would say 50-50, because 50% of the genes you got from your mom through her egg, and then 50% of the genes, your genes, you got from your dad through the sperm. So 50, and that's correct. But we can now modify that statement. We can say, when we talk about nuclear genes, which means the genes in the nucleus, 50. So the contribution of your mom is the same, 50-50. Okay? So your mom gave you 23 chromosomes and your dad gave you 23 chromosomes also. So that's fair. But then your mom, you also got the mitochondria from your mom, because the egg, the cell that became a fetus, okay, it carried the mitochondria of your mom. So technically, you inherited 50-50 nuclear genes from your parents, but you inherited 100% of the mitochondrial DNA of your mom. So now you can modify that answer. And it will be different for plants. Okay, for plants, again, the contribution of the pollen, which comes from the male plant, would only be 50%. But when we talk about mitochondrial DNA and chloroplast DNA, it would be 100% passed on to the F1.
Wow, interesting, ma'am. Thank you.
To pass on to the progeny. Yeah, so those are interesting things. And oh my God, there's so many jokes about that, but sige lang. But I'm not gonna do the jokes here because people will listen to, maybe some people will listen to this. Okay,
Yeah.
so do you have another question for me? Because maybe you have an appointment and I sort of set this in under 2 hours, but I think you're a very busy young person. So baka may date ka pa.
Wala naman, ma'am. Actually, parang some of my questions ay na-answer na along the way with your discussions already, ma'am. So parang na ano na siya, na nasama na sa discussion mo. So right now, it's your time to ask me questions.
Yay! Sige. But my questions are not genetics. My questions are very simple. It's more of getting to know you because for us to know you as, we know you, chill ka talaga. Actually, you're one of the chillest young people I know based on, your postings on social media and based on what I also hear from some of your friends whenever they sort of mention you in the conversation. Sige. So it's more of getting to know a young person because I'm always curious about simple things. Sometimes the simple things, we forget to talk about the simple things.
Yeah.
Okay, so since you're a vet, what's your favorite animal?
Animal dog.
Okay. So do you have a pet dog now?
Yes, ma'am. But unfortunately, he met an accident years ago.
Oh no. Okay.
And parang, although he's still alive, pero ayun, he's suffering from an injury.
Okay, so dog with disability, DWD.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
And actually right now, because of my past experiences also about pets, parang yung emotional attachment towards pets, parang inaalis ko na lang for as much as possible. I don't want to get involved with them anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand you because I used to have 2 close pets, really dogs. My last dog was Choco and he died. He got strangled actually. Anyway, sige lang. So what was the name of your dog?
It's before it was Kobe, and then right now it's Chico.
Chico, Kobe and Chico because you like Kobe Bryant?
No, because he's petite, so it's not spelled as Kobe, but
okay.
it's Cobi. It's Kobe.
Okay. Well, that's something very different. What's the breed of Chico?
He's a mix of Pomeranian and Japanese Spitz.
Kala mo, marunong ako mag-imagine ko ano yung pinagsasabi mo naman. Sorry.
Furry siya na, small breed siya, ma'am. It's a small breed dog.
Okay. I know the Chihuahua, of course. I know the Dachshund. Tama ba? Dachshund? How to pronounce it?
Dachshund.
Huh? What?
Dachshund.
Dachshund? Oh, German? German or Dutch? Dachshund? Oh my
Parang
God.
ganon.
Okay. So because I used to take care of that kind of breed, I cannot pronounce it.
Yeah. They are actually considered as small breeds. The more popular ones are the Shih Tzu, if you're familiar with it. The hairy dogs.
Yeah. Well, not really. Oh, okay, I will stop. Sige, so that's your favorite animal. So, just curious, do you know the number of chromosomes for a dog?
Oh my God.
Oh my God, I don't know then.
I forgot.
Oh my God, I also don't know because I'm not familiar with plants. I was thinking, he should know about the number of. That's really funny.
I'm gonna research on that, ma'am, and I'll get back to you.
Or you can tag me on social media. Okay, that's your assignment. Sige, but just because you're a vet doesn't mean that you don't like plants, right? You eat every day. So I'm curious, do you have a favorite plant? Are you a plantito?
I love recently. I'm not really a plantito, but I am passionate about growing bonsai trees because my father is a parang he's of cultivating bonsai trees and also cacti,
Cacti. All
yeah,
right.
and succulents
Very.
also.
I remember an exhibit near the Luneta Park for bonsai that was years ago. And one of the most expensive pots, I think, was worth more than 500,000. Ganun pala
Yeah.
kapal ang bonsai. Oh my
Kaya
goodness.
nga, ma'am, baka ano na, sagot sa ating mga kahirapan.
Exactly. Sagot sa mga kahirapan. Oh, kung marami ng bonsai tatay mo, baka pwede mo nang,
Ibenta na.
oo, i-online mo na. But sige, sige. Another question is, do you have a favorite scientist?
Favorite scientist, I would say Alexander Fleming
Why?
because of his contribution about the parang very useful kasi especially sa profession ko ngayon yung antibiotics, ma'am. So parang yeah, parang his researches before paved the way for us to cure the most parang challenging diseases right now.
Right. What are the usual organisms that are sources of antibiotics? Gabi na follow-up question. So, word quiz.
Kaya I know of bacteria, ma'am. Bacteria.
And as well as fungi. No?
Yeah.
So, penicillin, one of the most common antibiotics, tama ba? Penicillin.
Yes, ma'am.
Of course, came from the Penicillium, whatever species, nigrum something. So, which is a fungus. And for Australians, they call it fungi in plural. Kita, bakit kayo tita fungi? No, I don't understand. But anyway, sige. Okay. O, di ba? Alam na alam yung favorite scientist. What's your favorite chill place? Where do you chill to relax and to unwind?
I love going to the mountains. Just recently when with my friends, I think the nature has its way of parang grounding you and at the same time relaxing you. So the views of the trees and the grasses really relaxes me, ma'am. With of course good company.
Do you mind if I'm gonna ask you where you went?
I went of course my favorite spot it's Mount Calayo.
Okay.
And aside from that, we went to several regions here in Bukidnon, Pamulao regions, and marami pa dun. Somewhere in Malaybalay. Malaybalay is such a wonderful place. Right. Unexplored.
And then in Pasugong also, right? So many.
And Lantapan also, ma'am.
Yes, yeah. So I really would say that Bukidnon is really beautiful.
It's a promised land, I would say.
Right. Yeah, I also feel the same way whenever that's my way. If I cannot, well, I'm not really a mountain climber, but I can climb a mountain whenever there would be companions. But my usual way to unwind is to go on near rice fields or to sort of drive along the rice fields just to see green or breathe fresh air or sit for a while. Yeah, that's my way to chill. Kape na tayo diri. Okay. So kana siya. All right.
And of course, ma'am, music, it's a very good therapy and listening to good podcasts.
Okay, I'm now interested to ask, what's your favorite song at the moment?
Oh, I'm so fascinated with Ben and Ben. Are you familiar with Ben and Ben, ma'am? It's an OPM artist.
Come on, I thought you listened to our conversation with Leo because he also mentioned Ben and Ben.
I haven't watched the conversation yet, ma'am. I've been into the place for quite some time, so
it's okay. No, it's okay. So Leo mentioned about Leaves.
Yeah, that's a good song. But for me, I mean, like 3 weeks ago, I was really down. So I was parang doubting myself. So the song that fit me well was Di Ka Sayang by Ben and Ben. So parang sarili mo ay mahalaga. Parang ganun.
Self-care, self-love.
Yes.
Yeah, now I'm getting, although I told Leo after our conversation that I may find time to research on the Ben and Ben songs because I've heard of them, but I'm not familiar with their songs. but he mentioned leaves, and there was also, it resonated, the message of the song resonated with him. And you were the second person to mention again Ben and Ben, and now it's a different song. So maybe the
Yes.
songs really, maybe they're very good composers, right?
Yes,
Because
very genuine, and they connect to what's the need of the current generation for me, ma'am. So that's why it's not hard for them to connect to the millennials as well.
you know, they and you know, music is one of the things that I'm very grateful for. Although we have a different, we have a different
Genre.
genre for music. I love a lot
Mm.
of genre, but definitely we don't share all. Well, we don't. Goodness, I'm more into old.
That's
Sorry.
okay, ma'am. I mean, a lot of old musics are really very meaningful,
Right.
very parang it hit hard parang then if you try to parang internalize lang the meaning of the song. So
Right. But the good thing is that music, tama ka, music allows us to, I don't know, to soothe something, you know, that
mm,
some like not physical wounds, but more on emotional and even psychological wounds
true.
can be soothed by music as long as you find, you know, the right song or the right artist. So it's one of the things I'm very grateful for.
I
Yeah.
believe so.
Yes, it's the language of the soul, sabi nila.
Kaya nga.
Okay, sige. And then who's your favorite podcaster? Because you mentioned about listening to podcasts.
Right now sometimes I have difficulty in sleeping, ma'am. I have this podcast by Inka Magnaye. He's actually a
Oh, yeah. Oo. The famous,
famous,
you know, advertiser, yung voice niya, the voice.
yeah.
Hmm.
So from time to time when I have difficulty in sleeping, so I try to listen to her podcast.
What does she
It's
talk about? Because I'm not, I know, I've heard of her, but I haven't listened to any of her podcasts. What does she talk about in her podcast?
sometimes it's about story. She tells a story, and sometimes also she has this way of parang meditation for you to relax before you go to sleep.
Okay, sige. All right. Wow, ang dami. And it's almost 5 o'clock. Lagot tayo. So, okay. So, my final question is, huwag kang tumawa. Baka, ano, huwag kang tumawa. Baka sabihin mo pang Miss Universe ang tanong. But, but I know you to have the heart of a servant leader, and you have your own advocacy for service.
Mhm.
So, and then you're very young, so you have a long way to go in terms of your work, and you value your work. So ang message ko is, because I'm really hoping that some students would really listen to this aside from young people, but what can you share about you after graduating for a few years back already?
Mm.
What is the most important lesson that you have gleaned, your takeaway na what should current students should realize, no? Na dapat don't wait for 5 years or 10 years before
Mm.
you realize this.
Mm.
Let's say the wisdom of somebody who graduated way back in 2015, that you can partake with students, and maybe it's also useful even for young people and old people. At your young age, what's the most important value, or your takeaway about education, and how you can utilize well your education?
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Parang sometimes I wanted to be a motivational speaker, so to speak. But what I can say to aspiring students today, I think there is no shortcut to greatness or success. I mean, you have to work it out. And if you may fail along the way, I mean, that's normal, but you don't have to stop. Know that your dreams are valid, and just keep on trying with the right kind of courage you have. Be surrounded with the right mentors, available mentors you have, and just continue reading, learning. I think you have a future filled with hope for you. And lastly, ma'am, I would like to highlight also one. I'm also sometimes I watch Tony Gonzaga's conversation lately, and one of her conversations with, I think it's Will Dasovich. she made mention about sometimes you have to stop, look, and listen. Especially right now that we're in a chaotic environment, given the pandemic. I think sometimes you need to pause. I think we need to stop and reflect. What am I doing? How am I? Parang, kumusta ako? And from there, you have to assess, look for opportunities for you to grow, look for the things that you can control of, look for the things that you have a better grasp, so that those are the things kasi na you can have a better resolution. So you have to look for opportunities and listen. Sometimes we are so proactive in such a way that we are doing things that are not that are unnecessary. So that's why we need to listen. What are the needs that we really need, or parang the things that what we parang yung kailangan talaga natin. So that's why we need to listen. We need to listen to ourselves, to our peers, to our parents, and then by that time you have a better perspective of what's going on around you. So that's it, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing about that. Stop, look, and listen. I remember what Dr. Penaso said before. Many of the lessons in life have been learned early on, especially in primary school. And remember that we learned about stopping, looking, and listening. Okay, way back in when we were very little, maybe even kinder and nursery, because I think that's one of the life skills we were taught, to stop, look, and listen before crossing the street. So I'm glad that and now it's brought to a different level of, assessment, and then how you move on and the choices you would make in life, even as an adult. Thank you for sharing that, because
Yes.
doing this conversation, I think this is already the fifth conversation I am having. And I had to, I used to travel a lot before the pandemic, and it was very nurturing for me, because I really appreciate traveling and learning from places and people. And come on, it's been like almost 2 years of pandemic, and we're limited, and things can be very, how do I say it? If it's very routinary and monotonous, it can actually be something negative for somebody
Yes.
who used to be, mobile and active. So choosing to do this, I hope it's not going to be for me. It's a very drastic decision, but something that I thought could really be of value to me. It can be useful for others, and just listening to you. That's why sabi ko, bakit ba because I have a red book, small book, and I
Yeah.
listed the people who I wanted to talk, and I am already in number 35, and most of them are CME alumni, and most of them are very young people. And I was just thinking, why do I want to talk to these young people? And maybe of course I cannot fully decipher the reason, but maybe something at the back of my head was saying, I think young people would give you hope, because the kind of work that I do in the university, it's always about to cater to the young people, to try to help them grow.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, we have different ways of growing people. Yeah, but I think that's the core of my service, and that is to help nurture and grow people, so that they would be better human resources, and better people per se. And that's why sabi ko, doing this, assessing, thinking, listening, what do I need? Otherwise, I would really be very depressed if I would just continue doing the routinary things every day for 2 years now. So yeah, it takes a lot of courage actually to do something crazy like this. And whenever you start something, it's always a little bit scary and crazy, even at my age. But you find a particular groove, and at least there are 10 people who support you, then okay, you're fine.
Actually, I find it very helpful, ma'am. And in the business sector, kasi exposed in sa corporate world, one of the things that they would say that when you stop innovating, you are actually parang stop growing. So this is our way of innovating ourselves. And I think that kasi yung nature ng business, kailangan tayong keep dun sa pace, or else we lose track of the competition and our business will die. So parang ganun din sa survival natin, ma'am. I think when we try to innovate, we're actually getting better every day.
Right. And even at a young age, you're not speaking like a very wise person.
Gulang.
No. Wisdom doesn't choose an age. Some
Mm.
people have the ability to gain wisdom. And I remember, ano sino nagsabi nun? Intelligence is not enough. So no. Intelligence is not enough, but wisdom is necessary. So
Mm.
although that's not the right quote, but it's not enough to just be intelligent. We need to be wiser. And wisdom doesn't choose any age. Even at a very young age, you already have your amount of wisdom, and do not hesitate sharing your wisdom to others, especially to your age group and your peers, because you're blessed to have this kind of maturity. But I know also I have a few students who are 28 years old or struggling with understanding simple lessons in life. So, Doc Ariel, Guico, salamat kayo sa imong time.
Thank you po, Ma'am Joy, Doc Joy Hamago.
No. I'm just glad to, call you by your full name with the title. And that's basically to inspire, some young people. And yeah, you're doing what you're doing, and stay safe always as you travel. And
Same to you, Ma'am.
let's pray together for things to be better so that we can gain some kind of normality. Although we're trying to establish normality, but this is still not the normal that we want. Not the kind of normal. All right, so thank you, and hopefully we have another conversation. I hope that we'll have round 2 pag natapos ko yung lista ng aking bucket list. Pero I can only do conversation once a week. So
okay.
It's gonna take time. It's gonna take time. Okay? Thank you, Ariel. And
thank you then, Ma'am Joy.
Okay, I hope that I enlightened you a little bit about your queries on genetics. And if you have more questions, please PM me. Okay, PM me.
Okay, ma'am, baka our viewers will also would like to ask some genetic questions. They can comment on the box below.
Oh my God. Yeah, sure. And I will try my best again. Oh, yeah. So for the information of everybody, I never knew what questions Ariel would be asking me. So see, even at my age and with my experience, I still felt a little bit apprehensive if I can answer his questions well. But I think I helped him understand a little bit.
A lot, actually.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how to finish off this conversation. So again, thank you. And ano pa ba? I'm gonna research the Ben and Ben songs.
Definitely. Yeah, you should, ma'am.
Right.
Thank you also for sparing your time. I know you've been busy a lot, ma'am, since classes are few days away.
Yeah, by Monday. But this is a good break. This is the kind of break that is good for the heart and for the soul. So malay mo, di ba? And let me know if you would be recommending some people through Messenger, if there would be some people who would be good to talk to. Okay?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
All right, now you can have your rest. All right. Good afternoon, Doc Ariel.
Afternoon, Ma'am Joy.
Sorry. Wala pa talaga na informal pa kayo. Sorry ha.
Okay ra, ma'am.
Oo. Grabe na akong panguan sa inyo, no?
Okay ra, ma'am. Kumusta, ma'am?
Ayun man. Ikaw, kumusta? Where are you based karon?
Actually, ma'am, based lagi ko sa Bukidnon, but from time to time. Can you hear me clearly, ma'am?
Of course, yes.
Okay. From time to time, I have to travel from one region to another. Kay murag akong area is Mindanao man.
Okay,
so I have to.
Are you well protected? Do you have all your vaccines?
Yes, fortunately, I got my last dose 2 weeks ago.
Like, okay.
How
Sige.
about you, ma'am? Have you done your job?
Yeah, I got my jab. Yeah. Oo. Ano sige, ito nakalimot ko. Basta a few days ago. Oo. Salamat.
Jansen?
Johnson, kitabangan ko sa akong classmate. Classmate
Mm,
naman ng city, sa tagal, city health, whatever.
officer sa
Oo.
Malaybalay.
May balay.
Ah,
Oo. Pero I requested him kay abi yun ako overweight na ko. Pero only to find out na normal pagyapon akong BMI.
that's
And
good.
then they wanted to know sa akong other concerns. Wala mo ko'y other concerns. Okay, kay ko wala mo ko'y other concerns. Hindi pangitaan na lang ko nilang para makuan ko nila ma-accommodate siya. Ma'am, how about kuan allergies? And ko, yeah, but that was like long time ago. So, pa uban ma'am ko, siya, how about sinusitis, ma'am? Ko, ha? Ay, ko lang naman. Wala ko. Ma-trigger siya o hot temperature o cold temperature. Pwede na siya, ma'am, naulaw lang po kay ko. Okay, so shall we officially start?
Sure, ma'am.
Abi ni mo gikulbaan ko karon ko lagot tipo di ko katubag sa pangutana niyo.
Uy, ma'am, grabe lagi ka random ni ako mga questions, ma'am. Uy,
Oo na siyang random. Pero ako, I have questions for you also, ha?
No, sure, ma'am.
Okay.
Of course.
So,